This crowd rises to its feet. Okoro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers have extended their winning streak to 15 games as they head to Boston for the second game of the NBA Cup group play, trying to extend that winning streak and get sole possession of second all-time for the largest winning streak in NBA history to start a season. They are currently tied with two other teams trailing the 2016 Warriors. Joining me to break it down is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Better than our wing position group, unfortunately. A parade of sprained ankles heading into this Boston game, if you glance at the injury report. But, hopefully a couple of them can play. And obviously, who could really complain at 14-0, or 15-0, sorry.
Yeah.
Who could really take any of the shine off of that? This team has been so damn fun to start the year. They just kind of keep solving things. They always have the knockout punch available to them, even in games that have looked close, looked dangerous. And what a test going into Boston. The first time they've been underdogs in a while so far this season. I think the last time they was in Milwaukee. And I want to say they opened as 4-point dogs, which sounds about right. And, I feel like that's the way I feel going to the game. I feel like if they lose, it'll, it's not the end of the world, but it would be disappointing. But if they win, oh, brother, the hype train will run off the rails.
It's that perfect sweet spot. We can already build in some excuses and all that good stuff. No,
but my stress level will be high.
My stress level is through the roof. And, anytime that I emotionally need something, it usually doesn't go very well.
Sorry about your Grey Cup. Sorry.
I'm in
Or
a
went out for the Bombers.
Place. Yeah, losing to Toronto again, twice in 3 years. 3 straight Grey Cup losses. Very, very heartbreaking for me. But, the Cavs are right there. Luckily, the Bombers aren't the only championship contending team that I root for. Of course, the Cavs are nearer and dearer to my heart than any other team. So I am completely invested in this. And this start to the season has been incredibly special. You look after Sunday's matinee game against the Charlotte Hornets, and, the Cavs had already won as many games as no team. 28 teams in the NBA hadn't played a 15th game, and the Cavs already had 15 wins. That's absolutely unbelievable.
Great tweet from you. Great work out of you.
The only team that had played 15 games is the Detroit Pistons, who, shout out to JB and those boys. They're doing pretty well. They're in the playoff picture right now. But honestly, I think the schedule itself has been grueling. They have this back-to-back. Obviously, we are not going to be overlooking this matchup against Boston. But, they play Boston, travel back to Cleveland to play the New Orleans Pelicans. And after that, they finally get 3 days off. It's the first time
and then
that
they
they've
play
had an
one,
extended
and then they get 2 days off. It's one game in 6 days. It's never happens in this league.
And when you look at the Cavs injury report, that might be something that's sorely needed. Dean Wade has already been ruled out for this game, suffering an ankle injury. I saw Tom Withers had tweeted that he was leaving in a walking boot. Listening to Chris Fedor's podcast, he did say that in talking to Wade, Wade didn't feel that it was anything too serious, but they were going to monitor kind of the swelling. There's a wide range of how ankle injuries can play out, as we know as Cavs fans. At least it doesn't sound like anything too significant. But obviously it hurts to not have Dean Wade. He was the hero of the last regular season game against the Celtics and is a phenomenal defender on Jason Tatum. Continuing to go down that injury report, Isaac Okoro is questionable. He also missed the second half against the Hornets with the sprained ankle. Feel pretty okay that he's questionable. Isaac's a tough guy. He plays through a lot of stuff. I would guess that if we do see Isaac Okoro, we don't see him both games. Whether that's playing the Pelicans game, whether that's playing the Celtics game. I don't think he's playing a back-to-back. Just a guess in that instance. Sam Merrill has been upgraded to questionable. Karis LeVert is downgraded to questionable with a left knee issue.
I saw someone tweet that it looks like the Cavs injury report was the result of a tragic game of hokey pokey. That left leg went in and it never came out, Justin.
that left side is just awful. It doesn't.
We're
seem
not
to be going too well for
ambiturners.
and and then in addition, of course, Max Strus is not going to be active for the Cavs. So that really is basically their small forward room. Let's operate under the assumption that the questionable guys play. That is our rosiest scenario, because obviously if that entire list of guys is out, the Cavs would still have 4 all-star caliber players, but you are playing against a team with a lot of wing depth with none in that instance. So let's assume that these guys are active. Obviously, Isaac Okoro would remain in the starting lineup. How are you feeling going into the game, from a defensive standpoint? How confident do you feel in Isaac's ability to kind of take the initial assignment, I would assume, against Jaylen Brown?
Yeah, I mean, what it does is it really kind of forces Evan Mobley to be your primary Jason Tatum guarder. And you kind of have to rely on what remains of your wing room. And this is kind of no matter what happens, I think, with Dean out, there's no world in which you're going to stow Evan elsewhere. So I think Evan is going to have to guard Tatum. Ideally, you have Okoro there to guard Jaylen Brown and make his life hard. And then from there, I think you're just going to get pretty switchy. One thing about this Boston team is from small to big, it's a lot easier to switch. Al Horford is not a killer in the post at this point in his career. Tatum can hurt you for sure, but you can also bait him into some tough shots and ideally recover on the back end. I'll be really interested to see how they guard. I think it's the downstream stuff. It's not the starting lineup that really hurts with Dean out and maybe Ice out. It's the one big configurations that it gets really hard to guard. Where you're gonna have to see George Niang guard Tatum or Brown, and God bless George. He's been doing a great job this year on that end of the floor, but that's a task that's going to be pretty tall for him. So, you're going to have to do a lot of switching. You're going to have to hope you can dig guys out on those switches when they try to bully your guards. And it's going to be.
We're going to see a lot of zone like that.
Yeah,
to me, that's a big question because.
But zone is scary against a team that shoots as many threes as Boston.
That's what I was going to say. Is I was on with our friend Bobby Manning on the Garden Report podcast, and we were kind of discussing that of how the Cavs use zone more than most teams in the league. I think they're still near lead leaguing. I don't have synergy, so I can't get those specific numbers. But they play a ton of zone, and traditionally how you bust a zone is shooting from the outside, and Boston is more than willing to take those shots. Now, the flip side of that is Boston hasn't seen a ton of zone, probably for that reason. But maybe that could, make it tougher for them from a driving kick standpoint. I'm going to be interested to see if Kenny does go to zone, how frequently he chooses to do so, how many possessions in a row. It might be, kind of that off-speed pitch that you throw at Boston 1 out of 3 possessions rather than something you go to, consecutively. It'll be really, really interesting because I do get both the positives and negatives where you are going to be susceptible to, not only a lot of those outside shots, it's tougher to rebound out of a zone a lot of the time as well, especially when you're talking about defending, those 3-point shots. You got to really be aware of where your man is. Personally, I'd probably lean more man, but then again, I am a little cowardly.
Well, I don't think it's a cowardly thing. I think it's actually a bit of I've always felt like the Cavs have done a good job against Boston because they, at their best, have tricked Boston into taking shots that are not necessarily optimal.
Yeah.
It is, they've been able to kind of, when you switch a Darius or Donovan onto a Jaylen or a Jason, they kind of want to attack that matchup in isolation. And the Cavs are at their best when you are trying to go one-on-one against one of their guards or perimeter players, and those guards can just do as good of a job as they can to funnel into one of their bigs. That is where they like to live. So the zone ultimately kind of takes Boston out of tricking them into taking bad shots and kind of gets them the exact shots that make them one of the scariest offenses in the league.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking back to the playoff series where Boston, the first game they ran a lot of offense trying to target Darius, and then games 2 and 3 they really ran a lot of offense trying to target Donovan. Kind of recognizing that the knee issue is there. And I remember I had a disagreement with a friend of the podcast, Seth Partnow, just the other week where he's talking about, playoff teams they're going to target Darius, and I was like, yeah, they targeted him a whole lot, but it didn't work. Like, the 2 guard defensive numbers for that series, Boston wasn't particularly effective in that spot. And, as much as we want to, hang our hats on that series, if the Cavs and Celtics have a rematch and both teams are fully healthy, it's going to look dramatically different. Obviously, the Kristaps Porzingis thing would change both how they look on the defensive end and what they can do as a stretch offense. I think there's been times this year where the Cavs have been scrambling to defend stretch teams, so that would be really interesting. And then the other factor is Tatum's jump shot is fixed. I don't think that was anything in particular that we had done defensively to throw his jumper off the rails, because it was bad throughout the playoffs and it was bad throughout the Olympics, right? So I think that would change the complexion of a series against Boston. But obviously this Cavs offense and honestly even their defense is different than it was last year as well. So we're not going to get the full test of what these teams are going to be. I saw Kristaps Porzingis has resumed practicing for the Celtics, so who knows, maybe he'll be available for that early December matchup. But I still do think that there's, a lot of good things that we can learn on Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I'll say is, with the wing, if you don't have a Dean, if you don't have an Ice, because I think that's kind of the worst case defensively, but if you're playing more 3 guard configurations, this is a team that's given up a lot of looks at the rim to start the year.
Yep.
I thought the Cavs, more than any other team in the playoffs last year, really challenged them with their ability to create at the perimeter with their guards. I think Derek White is a tough matchup, but I think Drew Holiday is really happiest when he's guarding dudes taller than him and bigger and brawnier. He likes those big guys to guard. So I think that, if you're playing a lot, because if Dean and Ice don't play, we're going to see a lot of 3 guard lineups with Ty Jerome, Darius, and Donovan. And I think if you're going to attack this Boston offense, you need to be decisive. You need to be able to finish when you get opportunities, and you need to be able to beat guys off the dribble. And I feel like the Cavs offense shouldn't take a huge hit in that construct. And ultimately, you got to score a lot of points to beat Boston. You just do.
That's probably going to be what it comes down to. We can talk about how much zone you mix in, who's going to take certain defensive assignments. So this is probably going to need to be a shootout. And, discussing the injury report, I was very, very happy to not see Darius on there. He missed some time against Charlotte. He had the heat pack on his back. I thought once he came back into the game, was moving a little gingerly at first, but then he kind of loosened up. Wasn't sure how much of that was adrenaline or what the case is going to be, but really happy to see that he's not questionable. But I think this matchup is going to start with how Darius and Donovan do against, Holiday and Derek White. They're going to need to be able to generate penetration, and the Cavs are likely going to need to capitalize on the Celtics' issues defending the rim this season. But even if you are having a lot of success there, it's a double-edged sword, right? You're attacking a weakness, but then you're also susceptible to the math problem, because Boston is going to get up 50 to 63s because that's what they're doing all the time.
Yeah, they're 9th, I think, in the league in 3-point percentage. They're not the most accurate team, but they're just killing you with volume.
Right.
They are making 18.9 threes a game.
they are literally attempting over 51 threes a game. Like that's absolutely insane. And
I mean, you know how crazy it felt when Charlotte hit 23s on us last night? That's every game for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah. And, we probably are due for some opponent shot regression, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen for Boston.
Nope.
It would be really nice if it did. But, that approach does leave them susceptible to cold shooting nights, right? That's always going to be the thing with Boston, right? And I do think the Cavs now have moved up to 13th in the league in terms of 3-point attempts per game. I still feel like if teams are giving up the three-pointer, we hunt that. I don't think that we are giving up opportunities to shoot threes. I just think the early three-point barrage, from what I've seen this season, the Cavs get those shots up early, defenses scramble, and then we kill you on the inside. And, the interesting thing, if you look at Boston's last game against Toronto only shot 23 threes in that game. But that game went to overtime because they were getting to the rim at will and finishing at such a high level at the rim. You would assume that Cleveland would be able to do that at a higher level. I feel like our guard play is much stronger. I feel like our big men are much bigger and better. Jakob Poeltl went absolutely nuts. This is going to need to be a big Evan Mobley game because I think trying to contain Evan Mobley when, your only kind of real big of note is Al Horford, that's going to make things difficult for
Justin.
Boston.
We have to win the Luke Cornett minutes in this game, Justin. We got to win the Luke Cornett minutes.
I'm terrible at accents, so I'm not going to judge that in any way, shape, or form.
I was just going for annoying talking head. I really wasn't going for a region.
I thought that was Boston. I thought that was
maybe it was a little bit. Mostly it was Luke Cornett beat us in a few playoff games last year, and if he's plus, it's over, baby.
I feel like our minutes against him, even in the regular season, didn't go well, and that shouldn't be the case. But what I'm thinking is, in particular, like if Jason Tatum is playing at the 4, this game can completely change if there's an aggressive Evan Mobley that gets some foul trouble early. Now, I don't think that's going to happen for a multitude of reasons, but it's something that could if Evan Mobley's attacking him, or at the very least, really making him work. I think that the Cavs need to attack the offensive glass. I think they need to exploit those advantages on the interior. And the thing about, trying to exploit that interior weakness is the passing vision for Evan Mobley and Jared Allen is so high. The ball movement has been so high. I feel like if they're locked in like they were in the games against the Lakers and the Warriors, if there's the exact same intensity level from the Cavs in this game, I feel like they're going to be able to generate good shots, even though Boston's defense is strong overall.
I think this is the biggest test for their offense of the season, though. And I know that Golden State has a better defensive rating so far this year, but I think the personnel for Boston is really interesting because this is a team who you can run the same stuff and you can run it just as well as you run against the Golden State or a Los Angeles, and your degree of difficulty on executing it goes that much higher because they just are very, I think their personnel is really strong at mucking up things that should be advantages against the same archetypes. Like, for example, I was thinking about the Evan Mobley inverted pick and roll where, someone like Donovan or Sam is setting a screen at the nail and Evan is running pick and roll and attacking. Derek White will rip you. He'll jump out and he'll get one hand on the ball that you don't think he's supposed to get on the ball, or they'll switch it with Drew and they'll stonewall it. Like, I do think the worst case scenario for tomorrow night's game is something like they're running all the same stuff they normally run and they're running it just as crisply as normally, but they're getting 0.3 points per possession less or something like that because Boston is up for the game and their personnel is just so good, so much better. I think Boston's defensive ceiling is still super high.
And that's probably a factor when you look at their defensive rating on the year, too. I don't think they're getting up for every one of these matchups, right? Like, they lost a game to the Hawks without Trae Young. They went to overtime against the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, they're 10th in defensive rating right now.
Like, I think that they are a better team at that, and I expect their effort to look more like it did against the Knicks on opening night. But I'm glad that you mentioned, Drew's ability to get in there and rip the ball out. when I said multitude of reasons why I don't think Mobley's going to get Tatum into foul trouble is they have used Drew Holiday a whole lot defensively on centers. They used him on Karl Anthony Towns. I kind of expect them to do the same thing to try to disrupt Mobley's ability to tack off the dribble and kind of stashing Al Horford on Jared Allen. How the Cavs, if that is in fact the way that they approach it, I'll be really, really interested to see how the Cavs attack kind of their base defense, how much they are going to use Evan Mobley, off the dribble if he is going against a pass like Drew Holiday. Like that might change the ability to use Mobley in that way. And you might have to adjust to, okay, we're going to do some dribble handoffs. We're going to do some other things, where he's not actively dribbling because that just becomes too high of a risk play against a Drew Holiday level defender.
Yeah, Boston is not great at forcing turnovers right now. They're 14th in the league at that. And I think ball control is going to be a big deal because I think the Cavs are, I don't think the Cavs are going to match Boston 3-point attempt for 3-point attempt, right? So if you're going to beat them, you're going to need to win the possession battle in other ways because they're going to win the math problem against almost any opponent. So this Cavs team has been great at taking care of the ball and forcing turnovers from their opposition. And so I think you got to win the turnover battle with Boston, and then you're going to have to crash the offensive glass. They are a mediocre defensive rebounding team right now. This has been a thing that Kenny has kind of talked about as an emphasis. It hasn't really manifested just yet. The Cavaliers are, what do you think they are in offensive rebound rate, Justin?
17th.
28th.
Oh, wow.
And, that's a thing he talked about being a kind of a focus going in. This is a game where I think you got to win that battle a little bit. Whatever gives you, I feel like if the Cavs are getting up 10 more field goal attempts than Boston in this game, I feel really, really good about their chances. If they're dead even, it's just like the chances of you getting buried in a deluge of threes just goes up and up and up. Like, you have to win on the margins against a team as good as this Boston team. Again, the Cavs offense has been unbelievable this year. They're the best offense in the league at 122.1 offensive rating. Boston's right behind them, and most people don't think Boston's even playing that well relative to their standard.
Yeah, and it's going to have to come. Those extra possessions are going to have to come on the offensive glass because Boston doesn't turn the ball over. I think they're top 3 in terms of lowest turnover rate. Like, you're not going to get it that way, and some of that might be as a result of the shot selection.
Second. They average 12 turnovers per 100 possessions.
Yeah, so they're not going to turn over the ball, and I think some of that has to do with their kind of shot profile and the way they approach the game. Because if you're just swinging it around the 3-point line, there's less chance for a turnover rather than driving into the paint, weaving through defenders, and trying to pull something off that way. So you're going to need to get those extra possessions on the offensive glass, and it is going to be a math problem. But the one thing that gives me confidence. Obviously, I think we need to at least have Karis LeVert. We need, if LeVert and Okoro are out, that makes things tough. But I think the one thing that we've seen over this weekend's game since we last podcasted is, you can weather the storm and you can survive injuries when you have the top end depth that the Cavs have, surrounded by the supporting depth that they have. Because when you look at the teams that have struggled so far, looking up and down the standings, a lot of the time it's teams that have consolidated depth to get that top end talent, to get the all-star talent on the court. The Cavs have 4 all-star caliber players plus a lot of depth. So when you have Donovan Mitchell sitting against the Charlotte Hornets, know what your roster basically is? The 21-22 team with a better version of Darius, a better version of Evan Mobley, a better version of Jared Allen, and I would argue a better supporting cast than they had in that year. And that was a team that was a 2 seed heading into the All-Star break before, all the injuries hit. And even after all the injuries, they won 44 games. So I think it's an important reminder because it wasn't the reality last year when Darius wasn't himself. But now that we're back to this point, we know that if we have at least 3 of those guys, you can feel pretty good about it. And if we have all 4, which we're going to because they're not listed on the injury report heading into Boston, yeah, you might be a little short in terms of, the supporting cast because of the injury list, but you still have a lot of top end talent, and those guys are going to give you a chance in any game.
Brother, you have not used the word support so many times without doing a Zoom transition in your podcast career. I was just waiting on it and waiting on it and
I
waiting
saw your
on
face.
it. You didn't go
I saw
there.
your face.
It really was throwing me off. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I think the fact that the Cavs have all these different, they can lean. What will be interesting is, as especially if they're missing so many guys, like how rigid is Kenny going to be to like the 9-man rotation? He didn't extend to 10 last night against Charlotte. I kept waiting on the Jalen Tyson minutes to see if he was going to get a shot, the JT Thor or the Luke Travers, and none of them checked in. So there is clearly a limit to his comfort, at least within the realm of competitive games at this point in the season, in terms of how deep he goes. But if you're down Karras, Ice, and Dean, do you just go, we're gonna run 8 and core 4? Guess what, buddy? You're all playing 38 minutes, and that's just part of being a player, and it's something they've done before and done it successfully. It just is a matter of, it's a curiosity to me to see how far he's willing to kind of stray from his philosophy, and also I'm frankly just really interested to see how Jared Allen looks in this matchup, because he did not play a single game against the Celtics team in the postseason, and I am interested to see how much, because it feels like, especially without Dean, you almost need the double big just to maintain your defensive shell as much as you can. But are they going to reliably be able to punish a Boston team without that extra space?
It's going to be really interesting to see how Jarrett does in this matchup. My anticipation is that Al Horford's going to be on him, and the focus of Boston's defense is going to be centered around containing the guards, disrupting Evan Mobley, and just almost neglecting Jared Allen. And it's going to be really interesting, because if Boston is allocating all their defensive resources, it's really going to put Allen in the position to do his best work, which is just what Zoom does with you anytime you need some help, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. Man, I got so close. The start of that transition was really nice, and then I just could not land the plane. But hopefully,
it's okay. I'll bail you out, buddy, because Jared Allen, I pulled up his game logs against Boston last year in the regular season, and it was pretty quiet. He had 14 and 5 in the first game in 37 minutes. Not his best game, but he had 5 assists. Second game in 39 minutes, he only had 8, 10, and 3. So not particularly.
Both Porzingis games, I believe.
Both Porzingis games. Then in March, I believe this one was without Porzingis, he put up 21 and 12 on 9 of 16 shooting. And I remember that game. That was the Dean game, if you'll recall. And I thought
I remember that one.
Yeah, you might recall. And what a cruelty, by the way, that we don't get to see the Boston Celtics, tormentor and Dean Wade suiting up for this one. But I thought Jarrett played a much better game there, and I do think he and Evan kind of are my bellwethers for this one. I kind of believe that Darius and Donovan are going to be able to get theirs and be okay, but those two have got to consistently kill, and I feel like they got to kill them when they're on the floor together.
And you know what? That again comes down to kind of one of those tests that we wanted to see, right? We wanted to see how the Cavs offense held up against a stout Warriors defense. I think this is once again one of those tests for the two big configuration. And, so far through 15 games, it's worked out really well. We've talked on the last podcast about how they've been closing with both bigs on the court. And, when you look at the cleaning the glass data, keep in mind, the Cavs this season have the best offensive rating in the league heading into this matchup at 122.1. When the Cavs have both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley on the court, that offensive rating is 124.5. So it's even better than their league best lineup or their league best offensive rating. What that means is the offense is performing even better with both of them on the court versus one of them. Obviously, cleaning the glass filters out garbage time, but even if you look at the Evan Mobley minutes, it's a little bit lower. The Jared Allen minutes, it's a little bit lower. I will say we have an offensive rating over 120 with all three of those configurations, whether it's just Mobley, whether it's just Allen, or it's the two bigs. So this offense has been absolutely humming in every single configuration. But for them to be this good, for the offense to be this dynamic with both bigs on the court and have a plus 13 net rating, that's going to need to be something they lean on. That is the unique advantage that the Cavs have, is that two big configuration. And how that configuration works against the best team in the NBA and the Boston Celtics is going to be a really important data point.
I just kind of keep going back to, like, it's funny if you aren't a regular Boston Celtics watcher, and it's not like I watch every game, but obviously I'm interested in how they're doing as the team's by a mile closest competition in the East right now. And every time I watch the Boston Celtics play, you invariably hear the other team's announcer just groaning and moaning that the team kept breaking their defense to, overhelping on penetration and leaving open 3-point shooters, because Boston makes that every extra step in out of your defensive shell, every dig in, they punish it in a way that no other team does. And I always, when I think about what Jarrett and Evan on the floor together allow you to do, more than anything, it's that you just don't got to break your shell. You can just hang back. Everyone can guard their guy. You got to rotate. Yeah, you got to work. But you know that if they put Evan in action and he switches onto the ball, Jarrett's going to come down and he's going to tag on to Evan's man. And it's going to get, and everyone's going to settle in behind. The defense won't get a great advantage. And I just think about every other iteration of the Cavs lineups that I expect to be available with no Dean, and maybe no Isaac. And I think you're probably going to have to sacrifice a little bit just to contain the ball. So I feel like how well you do at dissuading Boston from doing the thing they want to do is just so crucial to beating this team. Again, you aren't going to beat Boston playing Boston Celtics basketball. They are so optimized for it, up and down their roster. They invented it. I just called it. It's Boston Celtics basketball. It's named
Missoula
after
ball.
them.
Put some respect on his name. That man is going to give one hell of a pregame speech.
Yeah, second
tomorrow.
row Joe, brother, is not second row Joe anymore. And so they play their style better than anyone else. They have the best personnel to play their style. So you have to dictate the game. So the more the Cavs lean into what makes them special, and force Boston to overreact, like, I can dream of no greater dream than an Al Horford, Luke Cornett lineup from Boston, where they go, oh man, we're getting killed. We got to try this. That's dictating terms to me.
And that has been something that I have consistently wanted to see from the Cavs. I want them to imprint what the style is going to be for every single matchup. I want them to change what teams are doing on the offensive end. I want them to change what teams are doing on the defensive end. I want them to be dictating the terms of engagement, and this is going to be a really good test. We understand that this isn't the optimized version of Boston. This isn't the optimized version of the Cavs, but there is still a lot of star power in this game. These are still by far, in their current configurations, the best two teams in the Eastern Conference. I think, far and away, these are the teams that are running away with the top two seeds. They've already put so much distance between them and a lot of those other teams that it's just going to be hard for anyone to close the gap. It's going to be really hard to end up on the same side of the playoff bracket again. Even if the Cavs were to fall to 2 or things get really weird and they fall to 3, like, Boston's probably going to be the 1 seed in that scenario. I don't see any path to these teams being on the same side of the bracket right now.
The Cavs are 6.5 games up on the 3 seed Orlando Magic. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and these next 2 games, honestly, and I know the Pelicans are missing everybody, but this is going to be such a big test, because even if you win against Boston, I feel like
the trappiest trap game that ever trap gamed.
Yeah, I saw in the YouTube comments they did not love how much we were using trap game, but I was
sorry YouTubers, that's what it is.
I was going to blame more kind of a emotional fatigue even, and fatigue of 3 games.
It's a trap game. That's what it is.
Yeah. I understand that. I was just going to go more in depth without using the lazy label there. But yeah, like there's the real kind of potential for the 2 losses even, the first 2 losses of the season. So how the Cavs navigate this is going to be really interesting. If they do play a shortened rotation against Boston, does Kenny pull the plug the next night against New Orleans and say, all right, we're giving guys even more rest, even with 3 days? Or are they able to, play both of these games?
I'm not going to know what to do with myself on the back end of that, by the way. 3 days off?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a little bit weird, but it's... Actually, I have no idea what to do with 3 days off. It's been a month straight.
Spend time with my family, who I love.
Sounds awful. Sounds absolutely awful.
Couldn't be me.
But it's going to be really interesting. We talked a fair bit about the Cavs injury report. Should also mention that Peyton Pritchard is questionable. He's got a left thumb sprain. So we'll see if he plays. Other than that, Boston is healthy, with the exception of Kristaps Porzingis. If Boston wants to throw us a bone and not have Pritchard play, that'd be great.
Boy, would I not mind that, because I feel like he has been, if Ty Jerome, in my opinion, he's been the best backup point guard in basketball. Peyton Pritchard is right there with him.
We probably have like 3 out of the 4 leading candidates for 6th man of the year, because Ty Jerome deserves to be in that conversation. Karis LeVert deserves to be in that conversation. Peyton Pritchard really deserves to be in that conversation. And then, we'll give a shout out to Buddy Hield out in Golden State. He's been playing pretty well too. But Pritchard,
Karis LeVert remains 3rd in the NBA in plus minus, by the way.
He's just been absurd. He's been so damn good. Hopefully he's able to play, but hopefully Pritchard.
8 Cavaliers 4 Cavaliers are in the top 10 in plus minus for the year so far.
Makes sense when you're 15-0.
Sure does.
Not a lot of...
It's just nice.
Yeah,
I like to sort by most and see like CLE all the way up and down the list.
Oh, we got to keep that going. We got to keep the frog dancing. Like we got to.
Frog thing is too much.
I love it so much. I love it so much. I became aware of the video a few weeks ago, and that all originated from. And I love that it's just kind of one of those organic things that fan was wearing that, I guess, outside of the arena. I love it. I think it just goes to show how much fun Cavs fans have with it. But getting back to Peyton Pritchard, that man hits a buzzer beater at the end of every quarter. And, there's enough 3-pointers to deal with the Boston Celtics and not have to worry about him throwing up 3-quarter heaves at the end of every quarter.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, he's been great. And, I just keep going back to, we were talking about that Celtics team at the beginning of last season, and I was like, yeah, they got 6 guys I know, and that's great. And those 6 guys are all really, really good. But, there's nothing behind them. And the league has proven time and time again that right now, it's less about having guys who can play and more about not having guys who can't play. And like Boston has I think the sneaky special thing about this Boston team is that all of those guys that I wasn't so sure about, all of them hit. Luke Cornett, helpful. Peyton Pritchard, helpful. Sam Hauser, helpful. And yeah, that you give a lot of credit to Missoula. You give a lot of credit to the stars on the team, but you also have to give credit to those guys. Like you would have expected at least one of those guys to turn into a pumpkin, and none of them did. And so yes, any help the Cavs can get, especially with as beat up as they are coming into that game, they certainly could use it.
And I think they should also have confidence too, because it's not like the Cavs haven't had teams go nuts from 3. Like this season, we have dealt with kind of those hot shooting nights. We've had multiple games now. Actually, the last 2 games where Chicago and Charlotte both hit 23s. Now the Celtics have had a couple nights. They had the 29 against the Knicks. If that happens, I just don't see us winning the math battle there. But outside of that game, they've only had 3 games where they've eclipsed the 20 3-pointers made marker, which is absurd for me to be using the word only there. But we've survived games like that. We've comfortably won some of those games.
Yeah.
the Cavs understanding the old point differential for the NBA tournament and just buzzsawing the Chicago Bulls was so much damn fun.
Did you forget about the tiebreaker rules and think they were just being huge jerks? Because I did for a minute.
No, I knew exactly what that was. I was thinking about that.
I was like, oh my God, did they make each other mad or what?
Well, here's the thing. I was listening to a terrific podcast named the NBA Daily with our friend Dave Dufour that you happened to go on recently. Very nice interview, sir.
Thank you.
And they've been all over the NBA Cup. They've been giving NBA Cup dates left, right, and center. They've been
good shorthand there. I like that.
They've been, drilling those rules in. I was acutely aware of the tiebreaker, and very clearly so was Kenny Atkinson. And it was kind of fun to see a team play like I would with 2K, where I'm just, the last 30
no mercy,
seconds,
baby.
I'm racking up the stats here. I need to pump up these numbers, and the Cavs just seem to have so much fun doing it. It turned what was a little bit scary, only up 4 with like 2.5 minutes to go, into just a hilarious finish that I will remember for some time. That team has to hate seeing Donovan Mitchell, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding. He is. They're gonna see him in their nightmares. It's nice having a Cavs team that tends to do like that, doesn't give up the lead in garbage time too much. I mean, how many of those LeBron years was the team up 20 with 7 minutes to go and won by 8 or 7? Because they put their bench in and then gave up the lead, and then our net rating was never as good. And yeah, you can tell me cleaning the glass filters out garbage time, but it's nice just to be able to go to Teams Advanced on NBA.com, sort by net rating, and see my team at the top of the list, Justin.
I'll say this. I know cleaning the glass filters out garbage time, and in the past, that's been very important for me, because sometimes we've been on the wrong end of some of these blowouts, and let's fix the point differential. I wish they didn't. With the way that the Cavs are playing now, with the way they put their foot on teams' throats, when did you start garbage time against the Golden State Warriors?
I know. I was actually just thinking about this.
Second quarter?
Yeah. Like, that's not... I feel like we're being victimized by how dominant we're playing.
Yeah, exactly. And
we are victims here at 15-0, Justin.
we really are. So it's nice to be on this end of the championship spectrum. It's nice to be rooting for what I believe to be a championship contender. And honestly, I want a victory lap just a little bit, because I did say before the season, and you gave me some looks. I know some of the comments gave me some comments, as they tend to do.
The comments do be commenting.
But I said that this was the first year. I truly believe that this was the first year where the Cavs had a realistic chance for this season to end in a championship, whether that was just, a 5% chance, whether it was, the 14-15 Warriors, where, hey, they're going to need some lucky breaks along the way. You look at that Warriors team.
Good sneaky shade.
That Warriors team played against backup point guards in all 4 rounds. That, sometimes that stuff happens. But I think right now, it's unfortunate the Cavs are in the same conference as the Boston Celtics. I mean, it's a very fortunate thing for the regular season when you look at the state of the East. But I think they are the clear kind of in a tier of their own, especially after that Chet Holmgren injury. I think Boston's very clearly like the most, number one with a bullet championship contender that we have in the league. And I just feel good about the composition of this roster. I feel good about their ability to hang around, to give Boston a tough series and potentially capitalize if things break their way, if, shooting variance goes the wrong way. We've seen that, sink Boston in a playoff series before. So even though we're not going to learn everything about this matchup, we're going to get some data points. We're going to find out what lineups worked, what lineups didn't. We'll be able to kind of assess why those lineups worked, why they didn't, what's variance, what's not, what's, absences, what could potentially change in the future. We just, even looking at the upcoming schedule, I just don't feel like there's a lot of tests outside of these 2 games against Boston for the Cavs where, we're really getting data points against a team that we might see in the playoffs. It's going to be a while until we get any other game. So I'm really excited to get this one.
Well, I mean, in fairness, the East is such a mess right now that some of these games might be, games like against the Nets or the Hawks, might be playoff games. By the way, Philly's about to drop to 2-11. My goodness.
Oh my goodness. And I see that Toronto's up 12 on Indiana because I got to bring that up too.
It is just a weird year, man. And like, I think ultimately, if there was ever, part of, your team taking a leap is you got to get lucky in some spots. You got to be healthy when other teams aren't. You got to hit the right part of the year where, maybe it's a down year for some of your peers and you can find your way in that space. Like, there's all sorts of environmental factors that go into winning, and we don't like to talk about that, but it is the case. And
yeah,
I think that the Cavs, it does kind of feel like the perfect confluence of these events. Now, in fairness, they are getting their first little look at the injury bug. I don't think that there's a single Cavs fan that's a diehard the way we are that watched Dean and Isaac and Darius all leave last night's game and not have the here we go again kind of vibe. And ultimately the team is going to have a stretch where they're decimated by injuries. Almost every team does. It is very, very rare that you have a team like Orlando last year where just everyone was healthy all year and it was great. Like it is, or who was the other team? Sacramento
Boston.
A couple years ago. Oh, and Boston. Oh, yeah, I mean Porzingis. That has to matter.
Fine.
Has
That's
to
fine.
matter.
Doesn't.
But I want to see how this team does when they have to figure it out with less than ideal personnel. I thought that Charlotte game was a great indicator of that. Where Charlotte made them work, but with 5-6 minutes left, they were up 10 points and ready to deliver that knockout blow. So I just feel like we're going to learn so much about this team. I'm really, really trying not to over-index on tomorrow night's game, regardless of outcome. But boy, does it feel important, Justin.
Yeah, and you know what? We are going to over-index. The fans are going to over-index. We're going to over-index. Media is going to over-index. It's going to get forgotten within a week or two. But this is the type of stuff, right? Like when we are hopefully previewing a first or a conference final series against the Boston Celtics, we're going to be looking at how did those matchups go, and this is going to be one of those data points. It's something that we're going to be looking at. The Cavs are going to be looking at it too, right? Like we've talked about how as good as they are now, all that really matters is how they're playing in April, how they're playing in May, and hopefully how they're playing in June. Like we need to get these lessons and figure out what's working, what's not, how we can build upon it, what they need to do individually in practice to be ready for a team like Boston. So it's going to matter. It's going to matter. Like I don't think we're going to draw definitive statements from it, but we are going to get useful data. I'm really excited to see that. And like you said, there's going to be tough stretches throughout this season. It's inevitably going to happen, but I really do feel good looking around the NBA. I feel great about the Cavs' depth. I feel great about the depth of our top end talent. I feel great about the depth of our supporting cast, and that is going to kind of help give them that floor to navigate the regular season. We did it last year, and that was about as bad as it can get.
Yeah, man, I really love this team, and I'm actually kind of proud of myself for how much I'm enjoying this win streak. I'm not sitting here riddled with angst.
Look at you.
I'm not just here riddled with angst about how it's going to end and what it's going to mean. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride. And I think ultimately that's the best way to fan, if I may be so presumptuous, because I'm just over the moon about how this team has started. Again, we are the fourth team in NBA history to start 15-0. If they win against the Celtics tomorrow night, they will be the second team in NBA history to start 16-0 with a, by the way, very good chance of challenging Golden State's record of 24-0. And, obviously there's going to be questions about this team's top end ceiling, just like there were about, that 2015 Warriors team. And
you will be questioned until you break through.
Of course,
same thing
and you should
for Giannis.
Be. And the reality is,
same thing happened for Giannis. Same thing happened for Jokic. Same thing happened for these very Boston Celtics. Like the amount of times that those guys got ripped since between 2018 to them finally winning here, 6 years later. No shortage of scrutiny. It's not just like a small market thing. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, it's the way it should be. And anyone who's saying that this team should waltz to the finals because of this precedent, I think you're probably getting a little too lost in the sauce. This is a competitive ass league. The Celtics are a historically good team, and they were last year too. So I think in the meantime, all you can do is look for the signs. If they come out and put up a 120 plus offensive rating against Boston, even if they don't win, I'll go, oh, interesting. Like that's an interesting data point. If their offense gets choked down and they're putting up like a 106, okay, then maybe that dampens things. But you have to kind of couch everything with the fact that it's freaking November. It's a long season. And as you said on our last pod, if they lose 2 of their next 5, which is certainly possible and not embarrassing at all, they will have the same record as they had in January, February of last year, the 18-2 stretch.
Yeah, just because all 4 teams that are, all other teams that started 15-0 made the NBA Finals, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Cavs are guaranteed to do so. We've seen before, just because you are historically great doesn't mean it's the right time of history for you. I'd still argue that the 2017 Cavs were the best team that this franchise has ever assembled. They were the KD Warriors, though. It's unfortunate that, this Cavs team is going to have to play the Boston Celtics to make an NBA Finals in all likelihood. Things can obviously get weird, and you never know what happens. But, at the end of the day, they're not the KD Warriors. We might not have LeBron, but they're not the KD Warriors. I think that this Cavs team has done enough to show already that they are a team that's capable of making the conference finals. And by definition, that makes you a championship contender. So we'll get some data there. I'm very excited to see how this game plays out. You'll be going live post game with our good friend Mac Perry. Excited to check out that podcast. I might be able to join. We'll see. I've got a little bit of a function.
Even if you only watch the second half, still come on and join and hang out with us. I know you got a work thing, but it'll be fun especially if we win. You should just join and enjoy the party.
Odds are that's probably going to be what happens. Both the win and me showing up.
Hell yeah, brother.
So we'll see. But at the very least, we will be going live post game after the Celtics game. Then a little bit of time off. We won't have another one until Raptors post game on Sunday. The Cavs get time off. So do you guys from listening to us. So that's a win-win for everybody involved. So big thanks to everyone listening on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of our review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, yo Cavs.